it was good to sit down after all that hard work I was doing over there.
Exhausting.
I'm exhausted.
Ron Sexsmith, so glad you're here. Beautiful songs. Love hearing you sing and play.
Woo! By the way, how close do I need to be when I'm talking?
That's probably
just
closer is probably good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You're the pro.
Am I?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll make this go a little.
Can I get a quote on my next album? You're the pro. All right. Oh, I'll just bring it a little closer to me.
There we go. That's fine.
That's what we do in Canada. We move the mic towards towards us. So, all right, here we go. So.
You know, Canada is interesting because they do support their artists, but I didn't know they also gave them undue confidence.
No.
But in any event, welcome. I'm so glad to hear you. And the songs are so beautiful. I love "Former Glory" is such a beautiful song, and it was kind of candid and uplifting, comforting, beautiful song.
Thank you.
And anyway, and I also just am so intrigued by how you find ways to create like certain songwriters. I think about Brian Wilson or Harry Nilsson or Paul McCartney or Nick Lowe or certain songwriters who find ways to use unusual chord changes to me and make them sound so natural. And I don't know whether is it the melody line that kind of leads you towards those chord changes, or how does that happen?
You know, I was a courier for a long time. A walking courier in Toronto. Not a walking courier, but a walking courier. And sorry, I'm nervous, a little bit nervous. And but I wrote many of the songs from my first album on the job. Because when I'm walking, or when I'm doing something not too taxing on the brain, you know, like pushing the lawnmower or something, I find I just automatically start humming.
Yeah.
So I get these melodies coming to me, and
you remember them.
And I sing them to myself and sort of commit them to memory.
Wow.
And oftentimes the melody will come with a piece of lyric, like a phrase or something. Wow. And then before, when I had my courier job, I had 2 small kids, and I'd come home, and we lived in a 1-bedroom house, and I'd have to wait for them to be in bed finally to get to my guitar and sort of figure out what I've been singing all day.
Wow.
I don't, you know, now I write a lot on the piano, but generally the melodies, for me, are the easy parts. The lyrics, but I pull my hair out over a little bit, you know.
Did you learn how to play piano when you were a kid?
No, I wish. You know, it's kind of a thorn in my side because my mom actually played piano, and I was supposed to get the piano that she played when she was a kid, and it ended up going to her sister, who used it to put plates on. And if I had that piano when I was a kid...
Just imagine where you'd be now.
So I didn't actually start playing until I was in my 30s because my family world fell apart, and I ended up moving in with my accountant. And
that's safe.
And yeah, and one day...
You'll know if you can pay the rent.
Well, you know, he was never there. He lived in this big house, and one day a piano arrived because he was going to look after it for a friend.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. I was feeling... you know, a mixture of things from my family. And I started writing this song. I didn't know how to play it, and I had this song. And it's one of my sort of more popular songs called Gold in Them Hills. That was the first song I wrote on the piano. And but it was just such a godsend for this thing to arrive. And just kind of when I needed it most, you know.
Yeah.
And so now in my show, not tonight, but in my show, I generally play piano on, you know, maybe 6 or 7 songs.
Wow,
yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the courier job helped spawn your songwriting, much in the same way that John Prine's job when he was a mailman in Chicago helped him sort of launch his songwriting career.
We talked about that once. I was opening for John because I'd heard that, and I said, yeah, I was a courier as well. I think he actually was a mailman, though. Right?
Yeah.
And because he would, every time I would see him, he'd go, how do you write those melodies, right? And I'm thinking, you're John Prine. You're no slouch in the melody department, you know? But he was just such a nice, sweet person, you know.
Yeah.
But I think also I heard Backrack wrote that way too.
Really?
He wasn't
As a mailman?
No, but I think he used to walk around and sing to himself. Yeah.
No, I think it's great, and you're absolutely right about sort of doing enough with your body so that you can kind of disengage your normal thought process and leave it open for inspiration and the muse and whatever comes.
Yeah.
But I have to say that as a guy who comes from more of a 3 and 4 chord universe, it's really interesting to hear and to just kind of sort out how you've crafted these songs.
And just to interject, I don't generally use more than 4 chords a song too. Every now and then there might be a weird chord. You know, someone will show me a weird chord, and I got to use that in my next song or something.
Yeah.
But in general, I use the capo a lot. You know,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's cheating or what, but
I've heard of those
Yeah.
capos.
yeah.
And when you were growing up, did you have artists, songwriters, singers that sort of lit you up on some level?
Well, Buddy Holly was the first.
Wow.
Because my mom, when I was very young, like 2 or 3, my dad left when I was 2, and he left his records behind. And one was it was like a treasure chest. It was a cardboard box full of 45s, mostly doo-wop and stuff like, you know, Dion and the Belmonts, whatever. And then there was this one record by Buddy Holly called It Doesn't Matter Anymore, which was written by a Canadian, by the way. And I played that to death. There's something, and I knew he was dead, you know.
Yeah.
And there was something extra spooky about putting this record on, and just the way his voice would do all those hiccupy things,
Yeah.
and I just was so blown away by that. And I wore glasses too. I still wear glasses, and because I always thought I loved Elvis, but he was so good looking that how is it possible to be that good looking? Whereas Buddy Holly, I thought, well, I could sort of make that work. I got glasses, yeah, you know what I mean? So I always related to Buddy Holly more,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny people talk about, and I, again, I don't want to make it sound like you're in any way derivative, but it does, you know, it's a pretty cool, you know, just the melodic sensibility that you have does remind me of other artists who are famous and cool. So I appreciate it.
Well, Ray Davies, all
Yeah.
all the people who are melodic, I gravitated towards,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
And not too handsome.
They were too handsome. They were out.
They're out,
They're
yeah.
out. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mentioned sort of facetiously about Canadians being supported, you know, creatively by the government in Canada, but it's really true that Canada has a pride in native songwriters and other artists and creative endeavors to the point where they actually provide some financial support and media exposure early on. And I remember I was busking in Halifax when I was 17 playing the banjo, and I was offered a spot on a television show. And then I told them that I wasn't Canadian. They said, well, forget it.
Wow.
You're not that good.
Wonder what show that was. I'm curious.
I don't know. It was a long time ago.
That's incredible.
But I'm sure you had those same opportunities and have gotten support.
Well, it's weird with me because I tried for years to get a record deal in Canada, and I got turned down by everybody. And then I got signed in Los Angeles by an American label called Interscope.
Yeah.
And imagine that, because I'm on this label Interscope, and I'm on there with Eminem, Nine Inch Nails, you know, and then me, and they really didn't know what to do with me. I was with them for 3 albums though.
Yeah.
But in Canada, there was a little bit of backpedaling going on because they'd all turn me down so many times. And
Say,
all of a
"Whoa,
sudden
we
they're
missed
like, hey.
one," yeah.
Well, like, you're great. We knew it all along. You know, it was all that kind of stuff. And so oftentimes I wasn't eligible for those things you're talking about.
Right.
Those funding and this and that, because you have to have a certain amount of Canadian and also I made my records often in America or England. And so I didn't get a lot of help in that area, but it's true that Canada has a European sort of take on that about the arts and like not just music but films. They try to support them. Yeah.
We're catching up. We're trying. We're trying down here. I also should mention that you wrote a novel that was well received. And was that like writing a lot of songs or a different kind of storytelling? What was that process like?
Well, it was hard because obviously I'd never written one before. I'm a big fan of novels and books, and what happened? I had a dream of this. It's a fairy tale, and I had a dream one morning, and I kept talking to everyone about it, like some actor friends that I knew, because I thought maybe it's a movie or an animated story or something. And anyway, it was a publishing company that heard somehow that I had this book idea, and they convinced me to write it. And I was just about to go on tour. This would have been like 2015. And I thought, I know, because we had some really long drives. I'm just going to sit in the van every day. I'm just going to write, And I did.
Wow.
And obviously, 16 drafts later, and then, when editor came in and did their magic. And I was so proud of it because, I never thought I'd write one. And it's kind of hard. It's hard to do. And I know that if I was Neil Gaiman or something, I would have hit it out of the park. But I didn't have there was many times where I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know who to ask, like, how do I make this scarier? How do I make this funnier, and this and that? So I had to kind of do it all by myself, Yeah.
Well, it's cool that you did it, and it's cool that it was well received despite all the efforts. And I can't even imagine trying to write in the back of a van when you're on tour, so that's even more impressive. And, I know that we're going to get back to music in a minute, but I know that in some circles it was almost an insult to say to a musician, "Wow, I understand you're really big in Japan," or something like that. It was like, you can't make it here, but there's this obscure audience that that has discovered you and has decided they're passionate about your music.
Yeah.
But for you, the UK and Ireland have really embraced you in ways. I mean, if you headlined and sold out Royal Albert Hall, your tour in Ireland upcoming is sold out. You're playing to places where everybody knows all the words to all your songs, and it's a tradition in Ireland. Of course, words and language and songs and stories are deeply ingrained into that culture. So that is far from an insult to say, it's rocking for you over there in Ireland and England.
Yeah, and it's nice because I run into other songwriters who have a similar situation, where for whatever reason they do really well in Germany or something, and you just, and I have pockets here of interest, we just toured the East Coast of America, and Minneapolis was sold out, Georgia was sold out, so that was encouraging. But it's hard when I came out in '95 in America. I was already old. I was like 31 already, And I didn't sound like Eddie Vedder. I didn't have the look or the sound. So I didn't really expect to get much radio. Yeah. But for some reason, at that same time in the UK, I was in all the magazines and all that stuff. And so we kind of shifted our focus over there. We did Royal Albert Hall, which I never thought would ever happen. And
all these people have recorded your songs. And of all of them, is there one that you're particularly blown away by, or think, oh my God, it's a great cover and it's one of my favorite artists, or anything like that? It's a tough question, I know.
Well, I really like Leslie Feist's version of my song Secret Heart because, it's been covered a lot, and most people tend to do it kind of like how I do it, I'm sort of faithful to and she did a kind of like Europop version. In fact, when I first heard it, I didn't know it was Leslie. I thought it was like Ace of Base or one of those bands like that. I didn't know who it was. And then my manager said, it was Leslie Feist. I'm like, oh my God, because she's from like Calgary or something, So I like that. I mean, Emmylou Harris did a nice version of a song called Hard Bargain. And that was really unexpected because I had, over the years, had my publisher try to get her songs that I thought she might like, that she never did. And here she goes into the song that I never even sent her. So, and I got to sing it with her a few years back at Mariposa Folk Festival up in Toronto.
You sang with Leonard Cohen?
Sang with Leonard.
Yeah, you've done a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I had breakfast with Paul McCartney once. That was pretty cool. So, yeah. And Linda, when Linda was still alive, too. Yeah.
I bet they didn't eat bacon.
They had a form of bacon that wasn't actually bacon.
Yeah. Some tofu bacon.
Tofu bacon. Yeah.
Well, listen, there's so many things to talk about. It's really great, Ron, to have you here and to sort of just get to hear you and know you a little bit.
Thank you.
And congratulations, because ultimately, the one thing you've done consistently for decades is you've worked. You've made stuff.
Thank you.
And I think it's really impressive.
I'm a survivor. What's that song?
Well, let's get back to music. Welcome back, if you would, Ron Sexsmith.